Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. This is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. This is love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. She was small, barely 5 feet tall, a slip of a woman in a threadbare sari edged in sky blue. Her name was Teresa, but to the streets of Calcutta, she was simply Mother. Reporters would later write that her presence changed the very air around her. Those who walked beside her said she moved slowly, but not from a lack of urgency, but because love, true love, never hurries. She never set out to be a saint. She didn't aim for fame or legacy or reverence. She was simply a woman who in her summation said yes to God and to his love. Yes, her yes, that's what made the world pay attention. People said that love had taken on human shape, stooped low, kneeling in alleyways, gathering the sick, comforting the dying, and holding hands that others wouldn't touch. Her love didn't keep its distance. Instead, it moved towards others and then stayed. It broke down walls instead of building them, and it didn't just reach out, it made its home in the lives of others. For nearly 50 years, Mother Teresa lived love, and the more she gave, the more it seemed she received in turn. Historians still reach for words to explain her life. Some call it sacrificial, others radical, some simply say holy. But perhaps the truth is quieter, deeper, and more familiar. Perhaps she knew love himself. And from him, she received a love that was fierce and faithful and steadfast, a love that refused to be contained. What is clear is that in pouring out love, she drank more deeply from its well. Love didn't just mark the life of Mother Teresa, it moved through her, making the invisible God visible to a watching world. Today, we are wrapping up our series called God is Love. Can you believe it's over? Some of you are like, yeah. All right, same. Now, in it, and over the last few weeks, we've been exploring what it means not to simply embrace God is love as truth, but to actually understand it as it's expressed and defined in the scriptures. And as we wrap up today, we're gonna end by not just again revisiting the imagery God has given us around the depths and the dimensions of his love, but by exploring what it means to receive it, not just as an idea, but as something lived and breathed. Something that takes root in us and not only reshapes us, but makes us a living witness or a living picture of God himself. So to help us understand all of this more clearly, we're gonna look at the passage of scripture that was just read, where John, one of Jesus' closest friends, at least according to him, speaks with clear conviction about what love really means, what it does, and how it's meant to change us. Now, for a bit of context before we jump in, like I mentioned, this letter was written by John, who towards the end of his life was exiled to an island called Patmos. Do you remember that from our Revelation series? Okay, good. Some of you are paying attention, me too. Now, it's likely that during that time, actually, that John wrote this letter to the early church. So he did so with a bit of conviction and clarity because this man was living in exile. Can you imagine what was stirring in his imagination, the evolution and the persecution of the church, and what that might have done to his imagination as he was scripting these words? What's important for us to know is that in light of all of that, John doesn't write this letter like someone making a polite suggestion to his friends. His tone, as we'll see, is pastoral, but his message is strong and urgent. He's not offering advice. He's giving more of a moral imperative to those who love and follow Jesus, something that's not to be read as optional, but as essential. So in short, this letter, and in this letter, John is basically saying, this is what has to be true if you claim to know and follow Jesus. No pressure. You good? I just gotta say, because I'm going to say it, felt like we already had church today, so let's just get through this part and respond to the Holy Spirit. Cool? Anyone else feel that way? I just feel like I'm an on-ramp to something else, so let's just move through this and then we'll get there, okay? Okay, let's have fun too. You know, the big bosses are gone today, so let's play. All right, let's look at our passage of scripture, 1 John chapter 4. You should have a Bible in your hands. Let's loosen up. We're gonna break this text down in 3 different ways: thesis, example, and conclusion. That's just for you, hopefully as a helpful tool as we think about this text together. So the first up is thesis. If you look down at your text, you'll see that John opens up this part of his letter with a thesis statement of sorts, a statement that sums up the point of this particular letter to the church. And in it, he sets the tone for the entire section about what we're about to read. John begins, and we see that right off the bat, that though he warmly greets his friends, and he does, he also holds nothing back and jumps right in, bringing the reader in with this kind of invitational and declarative line. He says, let us love one another. He goes on, look at the full verse in verse 7. Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. John, with what I'm calling a poetic apologetic, makes his thesis or his point clear from the beginning. Love, and in that, loving others, isn't optional for the believer. It's not a bonus or a feeling or a practice that depends on how full your love tank is that day. It is, as John says right out the gate, without mincing any words, the litmus test of a genuine spiritual life. Love is the unmistakable sign of someone who has truly encountered and been transformed by God. Now, love, it is at the center of John's focus here in this letter and also in the thesis statement, so it's important that we grasp what kind of love he's talking about. Love here in the Greek is the word agape. Can you say agape? Agape. Now, can you say it with some flair? Agape. Agape. There it is. And it's defined as a self-giving, other-centered divine love. Agape, self-giving, other-centered divine love. So it's not about sentimentality or fleeting emotion. It's not based on attraction or even mutual benefit. Agape is the type of love that takes initiative. It moves towards, it chooses, it acts. And that distinction here gives specificity to the image or the definition of love given to us. It helps us see that the command to love one another is and should be marked by these distinctions. Agape, this kind of love, is what we're commanded to give to one another. We see that clearly. But what is a little bit subtle here that I don't want us to miss is that by defining this kind of love, as John is defining it here in our text, he is also reminding us that agape is the kind of love that we have already been given or known. Are you with me? So you are to give agape love, but you are able to do so because you have first received an initiated agape love. It's a reaction or a response to the self-giving, sacrificial love we know through and from God. Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. This theological thesis statement from John encompasses more than just a one-dimensional command. It reveals an important and essential sequence in understanding God's love fully. And that is that experiencing God's love always precedes expressing God's love. By that I mean we can only truly love others with the kind of love God desires after we first received it from Him. Experiencing God's love always precedes expressing God's love. Now, just in case there was any confusion about what this kind of love was meant to look like in real life, John doesn't leave any of that to our imagination. He continues on in this letter, and he points us straight to the clearest, most tangible expression of God's love on the earth, and that is the life and sacrifice of Jesus, which leads us to our second point, example. In verse 9, John writes, "This is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. Now here, we see that love is not just defined, it is now demonstrated. God didn't just speak love or project it from a distance. He actually sent love. He gave love. And most importantly, he embodied love in the person of Jesus. This is agape in its truest form. And through this act that John is referencing, love is and would no longer be abstract or theoretical. Through Jesus, John is reminding us that love actually, when it's real, becomes visible, tangible, and deeply personal. Jesus is the ultimate revelation of God's love. And through him, we see that love comes close. It comes close enough to know and to be known. John's reference to Jesus here, it isn't just a nod for the reader or a pressure point to push to make us all feel guilty. It is his way of helping our imaginations grow as he is speaking about love, helping us remember what we have experienced and the kind of love that we are, for lack of a better word, indebted to. Without question, John is reminding us that through Jesus' life and death, we see a profound initiation of love. And this is true not only so we can know about God, but so that we can also know what his love is like, and we can know how to embody that love ourselves. We can know through his example what our love, the love that is meant to mark our lives, should look like. Meaning, if our love is only lip service, it's not love. If our love comes close, but not close enough to know or actually be known, which we know the lines for, it's not love. If our love lives more in promises than in our actual presence, it's not love. In 1 Corinthians 13, Paul had something to say about love, a little bit like this too, but you get the point. Jesus is the example. And while that's probably not a new idea for most of us as we've entered this building this morning, here in our text, it's meant to be more than just a comforting concept to us. It is meant to be a transformative invitation. Jesus' example, it doesn't just call us to imitate him, to become like him in our language. It actually shows us how love is meant to be both experienced and expressed. When we love like Jesus, we don't just look more like him, we actually live more deeply in his love. This is the great mystery and the wonder of his love. And there is a love like that nowhere else on this earth. As we reflect on Jesus' example, as we hear it here from John, but also as we know it further in the scriptures, there are several key truths about his love that stand out. Truths that I think will help us understand both the invitation to receive love, but also our specific calling to live from it. So I'm just gonna name a few, because again, I'm the boss here today, and we're gonna name these because I think it's important in helping our imaginations enter in more fully. So you ready? Great, just a few things. First, we see that Jesus received love from the Father and then gave it freely. Even Jesus lived from the love of the Father. And sometimes we don't put that together or piece that together, but it's significant for us as we consider what it means to love one another, as we consider what it means to give to someone else. Even Jesus himself received love first from the Father. We read that in 1 John 15. He says, "As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you." Jesus received the Father's love, and that's what propelled him to extend it to others. So if you are thinking, I, in my little broken self, have to conjure up love for other, good news, you don't. Yeah, some of you are like, whew, and some of your friends are like, whew. Jesus received the love from the Father, and then he gave it freely. Next, we see that Jesus was proactive, not reactive, and that's a word from me. Jesus moved first. He went first. Again, I want you to think agape. Jesus didn't wait for others to come to him. He took the initiative to seek and to heal and to restore. His love reached out before it was asked for, showing us that love is a choice to act upon, not just a response to specific circumstances. Next, his love, as I just mentioned, was embodied. Again, that reality makes him not abstract. It doesn't make his love abstract. It's one thing to say something on Instagram. It's a whole other thing to show up to somebody's door, yeah? Embodied love, it takes a form. It becomes visible when it's put in action. Love wasn't just a concept or a feeling for Jesus. It was a living, breathing reality expressed in tangible ways, touching, like Mother Teresa, the untouchable, feeding the hungry and walking alongside the broken. This is how Jesus embodied his love. This is how he said to everyone around him, this is what's true. This is what it means. And then finally, we see that his love was sacrificial, not self-serving. Again, agape. And this is the jugular, which I know we've heard 1,000 times, 16 ways to Sunday, and it's this, that he laid down his very life for others. And a whole lot of others. A lot of us can conceive laying down our lives for the people we love most in the world. For my mom or my dad or my sister or my brother, I could lay down my life. But Jesus, he laid his life down for others. A lot of ding-dongs. That's a nice way to put it. You know, someone quote me. The point is that Jesus' love cost him. It cost him everything, which means we should not be surprised, nor should we not expect the same from our own lives. It cost him everything to lay down his whole life for ding-dongs. And yet he did so anyway, so what would make us think it wouldn't look the same for us? Demonstrating genuine love, putting the needs of others first, looking for their gain over your own personal comfort. This is what Jesus did. It's a love willing to give even when it hurts. And Jesus, this example that John points to and gives us, we see that love is more than just a feeling or an idea or a practice, which I know you know. But I just want to remind us again today that it is also a catalyst, and this is what John is getting at, a catalyst and a window that allows us to see the God who is love. And it is our example to follow. It's how we determine what actually expressing love looks like and how the expressed love of God should look like to us, but also through us. In Jesus, we see that love is always connected. It's always relational. We've heard that in this series. It's not love in isolation, it's love in relationship. And Jesus' love was always directed towards someone, the Father or the disciples or the hurting or the outsider. His love, as we see it here in our text, it didn't exist in theory, it came alive. It was seen and experienced most fully through and in connection. And that's the invitation John is offering us. He's saying, if you have seen or known the love of Jesus, if you have received it, then certainly you know what it's meant for. It's meant to move. It's meant to connect. It's meant to reach and to tell a greater, more true story. And that leads us to our final point, the conclusion. In verse 11, John almost ends just as he began. Dear friends, since God so loved us, can you hear it? Since God so loved us, insert ding dong, we also ought to love one another. This ought, it isn't a heavy-handed command. Just like the essence of the letter, it points to a natural overflow of grace received. It's love responding to love. John is saying, if you've encountered this kind of love, the kind that initiates, that sacrifices and restores, then you are now a carrier of it. And as you carry it, this is the big part. As you carry it, you will know it more and more. John closes this small discourse in verse 12 with these words, no one has ever seen God. But if we love one another, God lives in us and his love is made complete in us. Complete here in the Greek is the word teleo, and it is a verb, an active word. And wow, for most of us, we can read that and go like, yes, God, make your love complete in us. I don't want us to miss it because this word is actually pointing us to a greater reality. And that is that God's love is only fully known or brought to its finish or perfected in us as we love one another. So we might perceive that we've known the fullness of the measure of God, but John is alluding here that there's more to know that cannot be known unless we love one another. To know God's love, as we've been learning about it, is to not only know it from God himself, but again, through each other, through what happens as we receive it as it's given to us, and then also give it away. So that's John's letter, his short part of his letter. And the question we have to ask is, what is it showing us? If I could sum it up, at least what I think John is after, it would simply be this: experienced love leads to expressed love. Love is meant to be both a picture and a pathway. A picture of the God who is love, seen most clearly in Jesus, and a pathway for that same love to move through us toward one another. God's love, as we all know about it, as we've all been learning about it for the last few weeks, even today, as we're being reminded of Jesus' example, all of it has been meant to make us complete. Not just so that we'll believe in him or believe in his love or be able to put it on a bumper sticker or hold it on a sign, but so that we can actually live into it and know it more fully. So the question we're landing on today is, what do we do with that kind of love? This is insane love we're talking about, not the world's standards or the world's definition of love, but a different kind of love. So what do we, and you can read that as God's people, or if you're new here and you're entertaining this God, what do I do as someone who maybe hasn't fully experienced the love of God, or I don't even know if it's real? What do we do with that kind of love? If God's love is meant to move through us and not just to us, if it's meant to produce a greater knowledge of who he is and how he loves, then you and I will have to ask, have I truly experienced this love? That's the first question. Have you truly experienced this kind of love? And if you have, what might it look like to express that in a way that not only reveals God to others, but also transforms something in you? Experience, that's where I want to start, because I think in this conversation, especially as we're ending this series, you've been hearing about God's love, it's easy for a lot of us to assume, and it's probably true at some level, that we've experienced the love of God. Maybe it was once, maybe it was through the kindness of your checker outer person at Trader Joe's. Maybe it was through the kindness of someone this morning. Maybe it was through an experience you had. All of us at some level probably have had an experience or an encounter with the love of God. And it's easy for us as we're in a series like this to just assume at some level, subconsciously, because I'm going to believe the best about all of us, that that is enough. To assume that that experience with love was enough. And of course, I would never say that to you. I would never say, oh, my experience 3 weeks ago with the love of God in a unique way was enough to sustain me throughout the week, but that's how I lived. Many of us, we don't often live from it because we're not experiencing it regularly. We move on too quickly, or we get busy, or we just keep going from that moment and keep going after what we think we need to do. And the love of God at some level becomes a distant memory, or more of a theological concept you got to hold, or an experience you got to hold, rather than a day-to-day personal reality for you. My point is that similarly, the love of God isn't something to be archived or referenced from time to time. We know that, but it's good to hear it. The love of God is something that we're not supposed to check off some list. It's something that we're supposed to receive again and again and again and again. And that's what John subtly suggests in this letter, that the love of God is meant to be an abiding, ongoing, renewing, and forming presence in your life. That it's actually the fuel for both the love we offer and the life we're called to live. Gerald reminded us last week that experiencing the love of God isn't just a one-time initiation into faith. It's a continual invitation from God for every season, for every wound, for every joy, for every day, again and again and again. This experience of love, it isn't just a Christian thing, it's a human thing. We are wired for love. Look at God being so sneaky like that. Psychologists tell us that we are wired for love. We are meant to live from it, and without it, we actually don't thrive. Psychological research overwhelmingly affirms from attachment theory, when we learn that secure, consistent love forms the foundation of relational health and resilience, to neuroscience that says that we know that love actually changes the brain. Oxytocin and the so-called bonding hormone is released when we're seen and held and cared for, that love actually builds trust, reduces fear, and deepens empathy, we see in the chemical response in our bodies that we are wired for love. Even a recent study from Harvard notes that the greatest predictor of happiness and health over the long haul for a human isn't wealth or success. It's actually the state and the quality of your relationships, which translates to how deeply and consistently you experience love. This science, these facts, they are really to make my point, but they're also pointing to a deeper spiritual truth. And it's that we were made to experience love, made to experience God's love. We're made to experience others' love, not just as a memory, but as a daily reality. And so the question we have to ask with that is, how do we do it? How do we keep experiencing the love of God? And maybe you're like, this is rudimentary. To ask this question, it's silly, maybe, but can I just offer it out of at least my own life? The need to say, how do we do it? How do I keep checking in? How do I keep knowing that I'm being filled and refilled with the presence of God? How do I know in the language of Paul that I am saved, I am being saved, and I will be saved? How do I keep experiencing the love and the presence of God? Because the more I do that, the more I actually experience the God who is love. And for us as Jesus followers, that is the most essential thing we can do in real time here on this earth. Again, this is gonna sound maybe simple, but I want to name how we do that. And as I do, I just wanna invite you, if you've been following Jesus for a while, just to ask yourself if this is part of your rhythms, if this is maybe more so a priority for you in your spiritual life, and if not, maybe to consider how to offer that to God as I'm offering it to you. So first up, in order to know God's love, to know the God who is love, we have to slow down. I know someone who wrote a book about this once, but I can't remember his name. That was not even in my notes. That was funny. We have to be, this is true, and a good thing, he did research, and me too. We have to be people who go slowly, and I know that seems really simple and very sexy right now to say. But it's true. In order to encounter anyone, to know anyone deeply, you have to go slowly. If I zip by you on a bike every morning and just said hello, what kind of relationship would we have? A medium one. But if I stopped my bike and we stood there and talked for a while and asked how your day was going day after day after day, I would learn a lot of things about you and you would learn a lot of things about me. The point is we have to go slowly, whether it's in the morning or in the evening or whatever time of day you have set apart for God. We have to create space to actually receive the love of God if we're going to be able to give the love of God. That's the point. And that's easier said than done. Because often I'm coming to my quiet time offering to God the things I need him to do rather than receiving the things he needs to give to me. Slowing down is a way of setting aside time to receive from him, to give him room to express his love to and for us. Yesterday I was mowing my lawn. I'm an industrious woman who loves a good allergy, but I was mowing my lawn, I'm listening to country music, because what else am I listening to? And it's God's music, amen? Yeah, no, not in this room. That's nice. All to say, I was listening, and there's a song about a father was singing to his daughter, and I just thought, oh, no, and I just love my dad. He's like one of my favorite people on planet Earth. I can't think of anyone better, a better human than my dad. And I was thinking about him, and I was like, oh, I love my dad. It was just about like, I'm giving you away, whatever. And my little girl, and the Lord said to me, and I had been holding a lot of things that day in the last 24 hours. Have been a pretty gnarly 24 hours. And I just heard the Lord say, like, that's how I feel about you. But I didn't let him say that to me all week. I just not given him space. And as I was listening in his grace and kindness, I just had this long, hour stretch of mowing my lawn. And it's just like he had enough space to say something to me. And I just wept over my lawnmower. I was like, that is awesome. And I just said, I'm so sorry I haven't made space, because I felt like he was saying, I've been trying to say it to you all week. That's how I see you. Making space to receive God's love is essential for us. My whole day changed after that moment with him. Literally a 2-minute moment with God changed everything, my perspective, my grief, all that I was carrying. And this is what we get to do and know in the kingdom. But if we don't set aside time, if we don't slow down, we'll miss the things that we need the most. Now next, we have to stay open, meaning at some level we have to cultivate an awareness of God's presence, which again is harder to do than it sounds. Brother Lawrence, a profound voice from the 17th century, he taught us to practice God's presence, which was another way of saying to live with the continual awareness that God is with us. Practicing his presence means being aware of him. It means turning your heart and mind towards him throughout the day in both quiet moments and ordinary tasks. To cultivate an awareness of God's presence is to, in modern terms, I would say it this way, you can quote me on this one too, to pick up the phone and to hear his voice. Just in a moment, in a brief moment, you're having an exchange with someone and to kind of turn your attention to God, what he might be saying, what the Spirit might be speaking. This is how we stay open, is to practice the presence of God, to invite him into every moment, even when we're mowing our lawn, for the purpose of knowing more fully what he's doing, what he's saying, and how he's working. Receiving his love is about giving him our attention. It's about being aware. And I would love to say to you that first point is just like the main thing and we got to keep rolling, and that's true. But the reason I wanted to highlight this second point is because it's actually a discipline to turn our attention to God. We have little computer things in our hands. You guys know it, I don't know how to say it in a cute way. Your phone is a bad distraction for all of you, and it is, whether you like it or not or whatever. Don't send me an email. It's a distraction. It's a way in which our imagination has been captured by a lesser thing. And I'm constantly reminded of that, especially when I'm on Instagram, and I'm like, that is not the real life. You know what I mean? Not that you're doing that to me, but yes, right? It's not real, it's lesser. What if I turn my imagination to God and what he might be saying in the room? What if instead of in worship today, I wasn't on my phone checking that email that I was worried about getting, that I was paying attention to what God was speaking in the room, or the injustice he was breaking down through song today as we were declaring his presence? What if I learned to practice giving God my full attention? What might happen? And what might I be able to participate in and receive in power and in life and see reality change? So it's a discipline. So we stay open, yes, and we let ourselves become aware, but then we practice giving him our attention. And it's good, it's awkward at first. Sometimes someone could be talking to you and you're like, giving him my attention. And they're gonna be like, you good? And you're like, yes. And they're like, I think I see a demon. No, I'm kidding. But sometimes, amen, in Portland? I mean, I am telling the truth, Christian. All right, so all to say, so that's important. Next point, and then I promise we're gonna come to the end. Finally, I think we have to savor what's already true, which is another way of saying lean into the trust of who God is even when we don't feel it. I have to imagine that John was thinking about that when he was writing this letter. He's like, love one another. Because if he just stopped there, I think a lot of us would be like, okay, let me interpret that. When my love tank is full, when I'm feeling good, when it's been a good week or a good Sunday. And it feels like John, through this example of Jesus as he gives it to us, is kind of saying, look, sometimes you're gonna have to lean on the reality of the cross and what it's accomplished. Sometimes you're just gonna have to lean on the truth of the thing that already happened, where he conquered death and conquered sin and made roaring, rushing love available to all of us. Sometimes you're gonna have to choose that reality, and you're gonna have to live in light of it because the enemy is going to come for you. One of the number one affronts to the church today is that we are not people marked by the love of God. And that is an affront from the enemy. That's an attack against us and our story that we're meant to tell the world. In this moment, we should be on the front lines of all the things that are happening in the name of love and the name of a greater story and a greater witness and a greater testimony in the world. If we have love, Paul says we have nothing. We have nothing. So we're gonna have to choose it. And sometimes rely on it in faith even when we don't feel it, even when the enemy has come for it. We're gonna have to choose in and lean into the agape love that we have once known. Remember it and let that propel us forward into the world. Now, here's the deal. It's good to be reminded of these things. It's good to consider them. And I just wanna say, it's good because here's what happens if we don't. And I just wanna name it in case the enemy's gonna try to say something else. when we don't lean into these small things, when we don't practice receiving the love of God, when we're not humble enough to come forward and say, I need a fresh encounter with the love of God, when we're not brave enough to do those things, then we will become people who are desensitized to the presence of God, desensitized to his working in us and around us, maybe even becoming numb to what we once knew. And that's just a real part of the Christian journey. It's true, and here's how I know it's true, because it's true in your relationships as well. You don't engage with someone's love, exchange, give and receive love over a period of time with someone, and you will become desensitized to their presence. Indifferent. I don't really know you, I don't really know what's going on, so I can keep my distance. So if we don't practice this, if we don't put into practice the series of things we've been holding, then we might become desensitized to his presence, and in that, not make God visible to a world who needs to see him. Next, we also will become or grow in being guarded. And by that, I just mean afraid to trust or afraid to hope. The less you receive God's love and the less you give it, the more you're hindered in your ability to have a holy imagination. John Mark once defined hope as the expectation of coming good based on the character and the nature of God. We need to be people of hope because his character hasn't changed. So in receiving love, we're washed, we're renewed with new thoughts, new thinking. I'm weeping over the grass yesterday, my lack thereof, right? Because it got smushed by all the leaves. But I'm weeping because God has encountered me in a fresh way and washed my imagination of the things that it was thinking before so that I could see rightly his love for me and let that be an overflow in me. So we'll grow guarded if we don't practice receiving love of God, and we'll slip into cynicism, which often leads to criticism, which is an objectification of people and sometimes what the Spirit of God is doing. And we can't do that, okay? Okay, let's get to the next point. Here's my point. Like a muscle, our capacity to give or receive love will atrophy if it's not exercised. And we are foolish, just like all these brilliant writers in the scriptures have said and warned people, you're foolish to assume it won't happen to you. The more you minimize love, the less it will be a part of your life and a part of what he's doing on the earth through you. When we cut ourselves off from love, whether it's by distraction or fear or fatigue, we will dry up. And that will affect how we relate to God, how we relate to others, and how we relate even to ourselves. Now, here's the hope, because I don't want to leave you in doom and gloom. That won't be great. Every time we return to love, no matter how far we are, I was a week away from really receiving God's love. I just kind of was crusty and dusty, pushing my lawnmower. Every time we return to love, we are renewed by it. Because remember, it's a love that conquered death. It's a love that's like light piercing the darkness. It's a love that's saturating. So as we return to it, we're renewed by it. And hear me when I say, when we're renewed by it, we inevitably will express it. So what you're getting is the fruit of repentance yesterday. The fruit of receiving from the love of God. Maybe you're like, you're just like this. It's true. And hopefully there's an animation of the Spirit compelled again by the love and knowledge of God that you're seeing that's on display. When we receive it, then we express it. And then we experience more of it because even as I'm pouring it out to you, so I'm receiving it from God again. It's like a cycle. I can't explain it enough. Do we got the cycle? Hey guys, I wrote that on a piece of paper and now it's this. Art. I don't know if you can see it because it looks kind of small. But basically, here's what I want you to see. Experiencing love leads to expressing love. And expressing love will always give way to experiencing love. And experiencing that love will lead to a greater expression of that love. We look at people on the earth who are doing amazing things like Mother Teresa and we go, how did she do it? She experienced the extraordinary love of God, made space to receive the love of God so that she could express it. And as she expressed it, I guarantee she saw the face of Jesus in each child and each person. And that made her love him more, give him more, make him worthy of more, right? Today we reset our minds as Christian led us to say that the principalities and powers of our nation are not governed by the enemy, but by the King, Jesus. And that's important. That restructuring makes us alive. It makes us see him more clearly and walk out in hope today. So here's what I want you to know about this cycle. Giving love away, even as we've received it, it doesn't deplete us, it deepens us. And the enemy says to us that when you give it away, you'll lose a resource. And what I think we're getting from John's letter, at least at some level, is that this, your love that you receive, as you give it away, you got to trust him, that he will deepen it in you, pour out more in you. I think about the story of the widow who had a little bit of oil. Do you remember this in the Old Testament? Poured a little bit of oil into a jar, tried to make a little thing. Anyways, a whole story. And then a prophet, I shouldn't use this example. A prophet was like, pour that oil into all the jugs. And this woman's pouring her tiny bit of oil, and it fills every jug in the house to overflow. When we pour it out, the small, meager offering we offer, God multiplies it. He gives us more. In expressing love, we come to know it more, and we live it out more and more deeply. I definitely didn't set out 20 years ago when stepping into ministry to understand God's love more deeply. I was like, basically 9. I'm so glad that's still landing. I've been making that joke for at least 10 years, so it's bad. I didn't set out to know his love more deeply. That wasn't my goal. I just, not in the Mother Teresa way, but I did just say yes to simply serve and to show up and to love God and to love his church. And that in my mind was the job. And it felt so small at the time, but over the years that, yes, at least in my reflection of it, has become a kind of classroom for me. A place where love moved from this theory that I knew about in Bible college to an actual experience. It's become a window into the God who is love. And looking back, I know I didn't fully understand it when I started ministry. I was a committed yes, a faithful yes, but I was still very much learning how to receive God's love. Still learning that love isn't just something we believe in or hold to, it's something we live from. And so over time, that truth somehow moved off the page, thankfully, and into my life. And after years of serving, I began to see that it definitely wasn't ever just about giving. It was about being shaped by the love that I was giving. It was about being received or receiving something from God as I poured my life out in very inadequate ways to the people of God. It's like God tricked me into being formed by him, which is great. More of that. You see, loving others professionally, which is technically my job, it didn't just teach me how to show up for people, because it did. It also taught me how to be seen. It taught me how to be softened. It taught me how to trust the slow, steady work of God's love. And that's what we're going after. If you hear nothing else from that little story, hear this. Ministry taught me that love is a revelation. It's how we see God, and it's how others see him in us. Revelation, that word matters because that's what love becomes when it's expressed. And as we think about thinking about God's love to living from it, there's a lot of things that can come up for us. But what's important is that we know that God specifically becomes visible through love, which means how we love, how we really love, might be the most powerful form of witness we have to the world around us. So what does that look like in practice? I certainly don't have time, and I'm trying to honor space because remember I told you I think God just wants to speak to you. And so I'm gonna get out of the way, but here's what I want you to know. A love that makes God visible are these just 3 things. Here's what I offer you. A love that makes God visible initiates. It initiates. It doesn't wait to be earned. It doesn't require the perfect moment. It never does. It's not held back by fear or awkwardness. It takes the risk of rejection, and it leans all the way in. Love makes the first move. It makes the first move through that friend who needs to be checked in on, that parent maybe who needs to say, I'm sorry first, the volunteer who shows up and stays late, the person who crosses the room and initiates the hard conversation and chooses courage over comfort. That's what love looks like. A visible to the world kind of love initiates. It's being at Trader Joe's, seeing something that's happening that you need to speak into or be present to. It's showing up and crossing the aisle and doing the thing. Okay, next, it needs to be embodied. And you saw this in the Jesus part of our teaching. Of course, verse 9 says, this is how God showed his love among us. He sent his only son into the world. Love doesn't stay invisible. That's the bottom line. It doesn't stay invisible. So if you've got love in you, then it has to be embodied. It means sending that text that says, I'm thinking of you, or that meal, bringing it after that hard diagnosis. It's sitting on the couch when someone's grieving. It's coffee brought, or the child picked up, or just the silence held with another person. It doesn't have to be extraordinary or riddled with some Instagram post. It is often just visible enough for the one who needs to receive it. Love has to be embodied if it's love. And it has to be shown. And then finally, love remains. And why is this important? I don't know, it feels really important to me just to say. Because I think in today's day and age, it's really hard to remain sometimes. That's one of the greatest witnesses we have to the world around us, is that we stay when others leave. And this might be the most challenging, I think, expression of love. Because love, when it's at its best, it stays when it would be easier to leave. It's rooted in covenant, not convenience. And for a lot of us, it's really hard in today's day and age. Love remains when forgiveness is required again and again and again. Love remains when relationships don't resolve perfectly or neatly. Love remains when wounds take longer to heal than expected. Love remains when community gets awkward or costly. Love remains. God, that's who we're talking about. God is love. He is 3 in 1, the Trinitarian God that we love and follow, Father, Son, and Spirit. His very essence is relationship. It is continual self-giving. It is continual receiving. From before time began, God was love, and God was never alone. And the miracle of it all, this is what I want you to hear, is that this self-giving, other-centered, joy-filled love, it came towards us. Not that he loved us, but that nope. Man, I had a moment, didn't we? We had a moment there. Not that we loved him, but that he loved us. Experienced love leads to expressed love. That is not poetry or alliteration. That I think is God's design of love. And it's what I've been saying this whole time. And if it feels redundant, let it be so, because I think the invitation for us, Bridgetown Church, is to receive it more deeply than we have before. Maybe that was the point of this whole series, that many of us would know that the love we've received is not enough, that God is saying there's more for us, more for you, more for me. Skipping through all this. Let me end with this. Mother Teresa once said, we are called not to be successful, but faithful. And that faithfulness, her steady, everyday yes to love, became the very thing that changed the atmosphere around her. Love, when it's experienced, can't help but be expressed. And that's what I want to see erupt here in our community, but erupt in our lives. Not because I'm a pastor going, let's all get generous, let's all get hospitable, but because I so desperately want you to know more of the love of God. And that's how you know it. Let's stand. We're going to respond to the Holy Spirit now.
Thanks for joining the Bridgetown family as we engage in this teaching series. To learn more about the life of our church and how you can get involved, visit bridgetown.church/welcome. If you're interested in contributing financially to Bridgetown Church and to our ministry, you can do that at bridgetown.church/giving. Wherever you're joining us from, we hope this resource blesses you and encourages you to be with Jesus, become like Jesus, and do what Jesus did.